Never before has a rowboat chase scene been so compelling. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2018 movie What Keeps You Alive. This is an entry from Colin Minihan, who you might remember is the director of Grave Encounters, a movie that I haven't reviewed yet, but was one of my favorite entries of that year that it came out. What I found was that this is a movie that is more grounded than Grave Encounters, but less fun, and has better characters than Grave Encounters, but not as good of scares. But this was ultimately a very engaging and very interesting cat and mouse game of survival that really did keep me on the edge of my seat, and I would recommend. But to get into more details on that, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one I gave a 17 out of 25. This follows the characters of Jackie and Jules as they go out to a remote cabin out in the countryside to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. This is the childhood cabin of Jackie, and it seems like a good place to get away from it all, celebrate 1 year of marriage, and things take a very dark, sinister turn, and quite abruptly. This does a really great job of developing the characters before things start really kind of going downhill, but I'm really not going to be able to go into a whole lot more detail than that, just because really this takes its turn somewhat early on, and when it does, it is a very dramatic shift within the very nature of the movie's conflict. Whether or not this is, your traditional 3, man versus self, man versus man versus nature. This takes a dramatic shift in choosing one of the 3, and to really give it away would be to give away what I consider to be one of the better shocking moments of it. So I'm really not going to be able to go into a whole lot more detail of the actual plot. But what I will say is that from a 5-mile overview, this is really simplistic. This entire movie, from a 5-mile overview, could be described fully in 1, maybe 2 sentences. But the written plot really managed to dig a lot deeper and really get into some very, very strong character insight. And because of that, the story became very full and very rich. And because of that, it managed to really well and truly shock me. So I had no problem with giving this a 17 out of 25. The plot as it was written from a bullet point storyline point of view was not that strong, but the characters and how well they were written and the chances that were taken on them really fleshed it out and made this impressive. And the intent, I also gave a 17 out of 25, again, mostly because of the characters. They really sold it for me, and how in-depth they were, how rich they were, how many layers they brought to the screen. An aspect of this one was, I'm not really marking it down on the intent, but I'm just having a little bit of difficulty knowing exactly what category to bring it up in, and this seems as good as any, but there was, well, maybe it should have been in the prior one, considering this is subtext, but regardless, this movie also had a fair amount of spirit animal symbolism in it, and it was good. I recognized that it was present. It was very subtle, but if I had to be perfectly honest, it really was a little bit elusive in the deeper meaning behind it. I really have a feeling that there was something attempting to be communicated from Colin Minihan, the director, that I don't know. I was picking up the fact that a voice was talking, but I couldn't quite understand the words. But it would be interesting to look into that more. Colin, if you're watching this by some odd chance, I'd love to talk to you about further details of What Keeps You Alive and the animal symbolism behind it. The acting I gave a 19 out of 25. The multiple layers of the characters really made this movie pop, as I described, and the acting performances really brought that to the characters and made that possible. Hannah Emily Anderson as Jackie was great in the different ways that she was able to bring her character to life. And make no mistake, she really, really did. there wasn't really. I mean, this character had all over the map levels of emotion, and I was sold on every single one of them. Whether or not they were fabricated by the character or felt real by the character, I was sold on. Keeping up with the beats that were being portrayed at that moment. Brittany Allen as Jules was what I would consider to be kind of the main survivor. And this is really tough to talk about without giving any spoilers. Suffice it to say, as Jules, I thought she did a great job of providing the survivalist against all odds nature to the movie, and really turning into a scrapper that I don't really, when you have a cat and mouse movie, one of the fun things about it, watching it, is the thought experiment of, well, if I were in this situation, I would do this and this and this, and oh my gosh, why are you doing that? That makes no sense. You could do this. And there were many moments like that. I was definitely not entirely on board with the characters in terms of the choices that they made. There were many times that I wanted to yell at the screen. But it's easy, when I'm sitting there, in the comfort of my couch with a Coke, an armchair quarterbacking this, it's easy to say, well, if I were doing this, I would do this. Well, you're clearly not thinking straight. But I'm not going to mark it down any points for that. The characters were who they were and making the decisions that they did, and I wouldn't say that any of them were so bad that they brought me out of the movie, and they certainly weren't out of character considering what they were going through, what physical beating them up, knocks to the head, that they took, what emotionally they'd been through. The decisions they made, although would not be aligned with mine, did make sense for the characters. The technical, I gave an 18 out of 25. This really took some technical concepts, especially in terms of camera work and camera movement, and it really took it to an interesting aesthetic level, especially in Act 3. There was one particular moment in there that the camera work was just a really, really unique choice that the director made. And you know what? I'm on board with it. It was really out of the blue, and it took me off guard, but I liked it. I liked the way it worked. It was just the briefest of moments, but it really was good. And the whole movie was like that. It was willing to take those gambles. It was willing to take those chances, and it was willing to show some technical prowess in the art form of movie making. And I really, really dug it. There wasn't really a whole lot of effects to be had aside from, makeup and, blood makeup, things like that. But what there was, I did like as well. So 18 out of 25 for the technical, and happy to do so. So that gives us a total score of 71 out of 100 points. Ultimately, this was a movie that I absolutely would recommend. This was better than good, not quite great, cat and mouse survivalist movie. And even if the logic of the characters were puzzling, they did make sense. They didn't pull me out of it. So where I wound up with is, yeah, I would recommend it, but don't clear your schedule. But if you see it in the queue, you see it available on Amazon Prime, I do think it's worth a watch or a rental or what have you. I think you'll like it. I know I did. So that should do it for my review of 2018's What Keeps You Alive. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.